The night market was crowded with voices, glowing lamps and alien banners waving in the hot wind. Humans were rare in this city, but tonight one man walked calmly among the tall figures, his face steady, his steps quiet. Some aliens stared, some laughed, and some whispered. To them, humans were newcomers in the galaxy, too soft, too fragile, too weak. From the edge of the street, a sharp voice rose. "So this is the human everyone talks about?" The crowd turned. A tiny alien girl stood on a crate, her silver hair glowing in the light. Her eyes were bright, sharp as knives, though her body looked small compared to the others. She was young, but her words carried like fire. She pointed at the man. "They say humans are strong, but I see nothing. Weak arms, slow body. And I've heard another thing, too." She smiled cruelly, letting silence hang. "Even in private matters, even in desire, you are weaker than any alien male. That is the truth of humans." The crowd burst into laughter. Some clapped their hands, some shouted for more insults. The man stopped walking. He turned slowly, his eyes meeting hers. He didn't speak. His silence only made the girl bolder. "What? You cannot deny it?" she said, leaning forward. "Or maybe you are too afraid. Afraid to show that your strength is only words." She crossed her arms and looked proud, like she had already won. But still, the man didn't answer. His calm eyes watched her, not angry, not embarrassed, just steady. This silence unsettled her more than any shout could. The people around whispered, again. "Why doesn't he fight back?" one alien said. "Is it true then? Are humans really weak?" another asked. The alien girl smiled wider, feeding on their words. She stepped down from the crate, her boots clicking on the stone. She walked up close, standing in front of the human. Her head tilted up. She was smaller, but her pride made her seem taller. "I will tell you again, human," she said. "You are weak. In body, in spirit, in everything. My people would break you in one night." Gasps filled the crowd. No one had spoken like this to a human before, not so directly. The girl's words were sharp, designed to cut deep. The man finally spoke, his voice low but clear. "You speak very loud for someone who has never tested truth." Her smile faltered for a moment. "What did you say?" "You call me weak," the man said. "But words are only words. When the time comes, truth will stand without shouting." His tone was calm, almost gentle, but every ear in the crowd caught it. The girl blinked, then laughed loudly, though there was a strange edge to it. "Fine then. We shall see. When night falls, human, I will see your truth, and all will see what you are really made of." The crowd roared. Some cheered for her, others for the man. A few leaned closer, already waiting for what would happen. After dark, suspense filled the air like smoke. The alien girl turned away proudly, her silver hair whipping behind her. But as she walked off, she felt something strange. Her heart was beating too fast. She had shouted, she had mocked, she had humiliated. But the human's calm eyes still stayed in her mind. They were not the eyes of someone weak. The man walked, on ignoring the noise. He carried no anger, no shame. But deep inside, he knew the girl's challenge was not just for the crowd. It was for herself. She wanted to believe her words. She wanted to believe that humans were weak. And when she discovered the truth, her world would never be the same. That night was coming. The crowd was still buzzing after the alien girl's bold claim. Everyone expected the human man to fight back, to argue, or at least defend his honor. But he had not. He had spoken only a few quiet words, then walked away. This silence confused many. Some laughed harder, saying, "See? He is weak. He has no answer." Others, however, grew uneasy. A true weakling would have shouted, would have tried to prove something right there. But this man, he had only walked with calm steps, his face like stone. The alien girl, her name was Lyra, watched him from the shadows. She clenched her fists. Why had he not reacted? Why had he not even looked angry? She had insulted his strength, his body, his spirit. Yet his eyes had remained steady, like a man who already knew the outcome of a game. That evening, as the market lights dimmed and the alien crowds went home, Lyra followed the man at a distance. He walked alone through the narrow streets, carrying nothing but a small pack. His shoulders did not sag and his steps never hesitated. There was no fear in him, no sign of weakness. Lyra muttered under her breath, "He thinks silence makes him strong. But he will see. I will prove to everyone what humans really are." The man finally stopped at an inn made of stone and glowing vines. Inside, the keeper looked surprised to see a human but still offered him a room. Lyra slipped inside too, demanding her own room nearby. She wanted to watch, to test him. Hours passed. The inn grew quiet. Aliens slept in their rooms, heavy doors shut, strange lullabies echoing faintly. But Lyra could not sleep. She paced her floor, thinking of his eyes. Every time she closed her own, she saw them again, calm, unshaken, unafraid. Finally, she stepped into the hallway. The silence of the inn felt thick, broken only by the wind outside. She crept closer to his door, her small frame moving soundlessly. She wanted to catch him in some weakness, to prove her words were true. But when she placed her ear against the door, she heard nothing. No snoring, no tossing or turning. She frowned and pressed harder. Suddenly a voice came from the other side. "You will not find what you are looking for." Lyra jumped back, her heart racing. She hadn't even heard him move. The door creaked open, and there he stood. Calm, as ever, his dark eyes resting on her. What do you mean?" she asked, forcing her voice to sound steady. "You search for weakness," he said, "but you will not find it here." His tone was not proud or loud. It was quiet, like the stillness of water that hides great depth. Her mouth went dry. For a moment she had no words. Then her pride flared again. You think silence makes you strong? You think ignoring me proves something?" He looked at her for a long time before answering. "Strength is not in noise. It is in patience, in knowing when to act and when not to waste breath." Lyra's chest tightened. She had never heard such words before. In her world, strength was shown by shouting, fighting, and dominating. Yet here stood a man who needed none of that. She stepped closer, her eyes narrowed. "Then show me. When the night is over, show me that your words are not empty." For the first time, a faint smile touched his lips. "If you stay long enough, you will see." Lyra stumbled back, her face burning. She turned quickly, storming down the hall. Her small boots echoed against the floor. But even as she returned to her room, his voice lingered in her ears, calm and certain. She closed the door and pressed her back against it. Her chest was rising too fast. Why did his silence bother her more than anger ever could? Why did his confidence feel heavier than a shouted challenge? She tried to sleep again, but her body refused. Her mind replayed the moment at the door, his steady voice, his faint smile. She clenched her teeth and whispered to herself, No, he is still weak. I will prove it." But deep down, a small crack had opened inside her pride. Outside, the night grew colder. The alien winds rattled the inn's walls. Somewhere in the distance, a beast howled. And in the silence of that night, Lyra realized something she would never admit aloud. She was not sure anymore if the human was weak at all, and the true test had not even begun. The inn grew quieter as midnight fell. Wind brushed against the windows, carrying with it the distant cry of creatures in the dark forest outside the city. Lyra lay awake in her room, her silver hair spread across the pillow, her heart restless. She told herself over and over that she had nothing to fear, that she would soon prove the human weak. But no matter how much she repeated it, sleep refused to come. The memory of his calm eyes at the door kept haunting her. He had not shouted, not argued. He had only spoken with quiet certainty. Finally, unable to rest, she rose from the bed and opened her window. Cold air swept inside. She looked down at the empty street below, shadows moving like ghosts between, the lamps, Somewhere she heard the faint rumble of thunder. A storm was coming. Just then, a scream echoed through the inn. It was sharp, terrified, and cut the silence like a knife. Lyra jumped, her chest tight. Without thinking, she ran into the hallway. Doors opened, aliens peeked out, murmuring in fear. The storm outside cracked again, lightning flashing through the windows. The sound came from downstairs. Lyra hurried down, her small boots slapping against the wood. When she reached the lower hall, she froze. One of the inn's walls had been broken open by a beast, huge, with claws like swords and eyes glowing red. It had followed the storm into the city. The innkeeper cowered behind the counter. Guests screamed, some already running into the night, and in the center of it all stood the human. He had no weapon, no armor, nothing but his bare hands, yet he did not move back. He faced the beast with the same calm Lyra had seen before. His breathing was steady, his shoulders relaxed, as if he had been waiting for this moment. Lyra's eyes widened. She wanted to shout at him to run, to hide, but the words caught in her throat. He didn't look afraid. The beast roared, shaking the room. Tables broke, glass shattered. It lunged forward, claws raised. Gasps filled the air. But the human moved at the last second, sliding to the side with swift, controlled steps. He grabbed a broken beam from the floor, twisted his body, and drove it into the beast's side with a force that made the room shake. The creature howled, stumbling back. The man did not shout, did not roar. He fought in silence, every strike precise, every move controlled. Lyra felt her chest tighten. This was no weakness. This was strength. Cold, focused, unshakable. The beast tried again, slashing wildly. The man ducked low, grabbed its arm, and with a sudden pull, brought the giant creature crashing to the ground. Dust filled the air. Lightning flashed again through the broken wall, and for a moment the human stood over the fallen monster like a shadow of iron. The inn went silent. Only the storm outside continued to rage. Lyra's lips parted, but no sound came. She could not look away. Her heart was pounding too fast, her pride melting with every breath. This was the same man she had mocked in front of everyone. This was the weak human she had promised to humiliate. The man finally dropped the broken beam. He stepped back, his chest rising and falling slowly. He did not smile, did not boast. His face stayed calm, as if what he had done was nothing worth mention. The beast, wounded and terrified, dragged itself through the broken wall and fled into the storm. The inn guests whispered in awe. Some stared at the man with fear, others with respect. Lyra took a step forward without realizing it. Her voice shook when she finally spoke. Why didn't you run?" He turned his head, meeting her eyes. "Running does not save anyone," he said quietly. "Strength is not for myself, it is for those around me." Her throat went dry. Those words sank deeper than the sound of the beast's roar. The innkeeper thanked him. Others whispered blessings, but the man only returned to his room. No victory speech, no claim of power, only silence. Lyra remained where she stood, trembling. She looked at her small hands, then at the door where he had vanished. Her chest burned with confusion. She had wanted to prove him weak, but now all she could think of was his calm, his strength, his self-control. When she finally returned to her room, she could not close her eyes. The storm still raged outside, but the real storm was inside her chest. She whispered into the darkness, words only she could hear. "Maybe. I was wrong." The night had been unexpected, and it was only the beginning. The storm faded slowly, leaving the city damp and quiet. By morning, the broken wall of the inn had been covered with boards, and whispers of the night spread across the streets. Everyone spoke of the human who had faced the beast alone. Some called him fearless, some said he was foolish, but no one dared call him weak anymore. Lyra heard all of it as she sat at a corner table in the inn's dining hall. Her silver hair was messy, her eyes heavy from a night without sleep. She stirred her drink without tasting it, her thoughts circling like restless birds. She remembered every detail of the fight, the man's steady breathing, his calm face, his silent strength. She remembered how he had stood in front of the beast, not for glory, not for himself, but to protect everyone else. Her pride twisted inside her chest. No, he cannot be stronger than us, she thought. He cannot. Yet her heart kept beating faster whenever she pictured him standing tall, unshaken. When the man finally came downstairs, the room grew quiet. He wore simple clothes, no armor, no sign of a fighter. His eyes were calm as ever, as if nothing had happened. He ate in silence, ignoring the curious stares. Lyra's hands clenched into fists. She wanted to challenge him again, to say something sharp, to remind everyone of her bold words from yesterday. But the words caught in her throat. If she mocked him now, the memory of last night would crush her. Everyone had seen it. She had seen it. Still, she could not let herself fall silent. She pushed back her chair and walked to his table, her small boots tapping against the floor. The inn guests turned, waiting for another confrontation. She stopped in front of him. Last night, she began, her voice firmer than she felt. You were lucky. That beast was clumsy. If it had been a real fighter, you would not have stood a chance. The man looked up, his eyes steady on hers. For a moment, she felt like she was standing in the middle of that storm again, facing something unshakable. He did not argue. He did not defend himself. He simply said, "Believe what you wish." And then he returned to his food. Lyra froze. His silence was heavier than her words. Her cheeks grew hot as the inn guests whispered again. Some smirked at her, some shook their heads. She turned sharply and walked away, her pride burning like fire. But as she reached the door, she heard the innkeeper speaking to him softly. "Thank you again, human. Without you, many would have died." The man answered in that calm voice. "Strength is meaningless if it serves only the self." Lyra stopped walking. Her chest tightened. She had heard many warriors in her world, boasting of power, glory, victory. But never had she heard words like his. That evening, she left the inn and wandered the market streets. She needed to clear her thoughts, but the voices of the crowd followed her. Everywhere, people spoke of the human. Children laughed as they mimicked his calm stance. Merchants retold the story with wide gestures. "Did you see him?" one alien whispered. "He faced it like he had no fear. They say he fought not to kill, but to protect." Another added. "A true warrior," someone concluded. Lyra's pride cracked deeper. The human's shadow had stretched over the whole city, and she, the one who had called him weak, could not escape it. She clenched her fists and whispered to herself, "No, I will not bow to him. I will prove it. I must." But when she returned to the inn that night, her steps slowed at his door. She stood there in the dim hallway, her heart pounding. She wanted to knock, to demand another test, to prove herself right. Yet her hand would not move. She remembered his eyes, his voice, his words. At last, she whispered through the wood, so quietly she hoped he would not hear. Why are you so calm? Why does it feel like I'm the one shaking, not you?" No answer came, only silence. And that silence felt heavier than any reply. Lyra returned to her room, sitting on the bed with her knees drawn close. The crack in her pride widened, though she tried to hide it even from herself. She whispered again, almost like a confession. Maybe he is not weak at all. The night passed slowly, filled with restless thoughts. The alien girl who had mocked the human now found herself unsettled, unsure, and for the first time, afraid that her truth had been a lie. And the more she fought the thought, the deeper it dug into her heart. The second night fell heavy over the city. Clouds covered the moons, leaving the streets in pale darkness. The repaired inn stood quiet, its lamps glowing faintly against the cold air. Lyra sat in her room, restless again. She told herself she hated the human. She told herself she needed to prove him weak. Yet her thoughts betrayed her. She remembered the storm, The beast, his steady voice, his calm eyes. Every memory made her chest tighten. Finally, unable to resist, she stepped into the hallway. The air was still, filled only with the sound of wind pressing against the walls. Slowly, her small feet carried her toward his door. She told herself she only wanted to test him. She only wanted to find cracks in his silence. But deep down, something else pulled her there, something she did not want to name. When she reached the door, she hesitated. Her hand lifted, hovered, then dropped. She turned to leave, but the door opened before she could move. The human stood there. His dark eyes met hers, calm as always. He did not look surprised, as if he had already known she would come. Lyra swallowed hard. I just wanted to. Her voice shook. She hated that it did. I wanted to remind you. Tomorrow I will show everyone you are not strong. He studied her quietly, then stepped aside. Then come in. She froze. What? Come in, he repeated. His voice was neither sharp nor kind. It was simply steady, like stone. Lyra's pride screamed at her to refuse, but her legs carried her inside before she could stop them. The room was simple. A bed, a table, a lamp. No weapons, no armor, nothing to prove him a warrior. And yet, the air felt heavy with his presence. She stood awkwardly near the table, her arms crossed tight. Why are you not afraid? Why do you never shout back? Why do you never fight with words? She demanded. The human sat down on the edge of the bed, his hands resting calmly on his knees. Because words are smoke. They rise, they fade. Truth does not need them. Her breath caught. She hated how his voice made her chest stir. You think you're better than us? You think your silence is stronger than our power? He shook his head. Strength is not about being better than others. It is about standing when it matters. It is about holding steady when others fall. Lyra's lips trembled, but she forced them into a scowl. And last night? Was that what you call strength? You could have died. He looked at her, his eyes, steady. If I had run, others would have died. My life is not worth more than theirs. For a moment, the room was silent. Lyra's chest rose and fell too fast. She wanted to argue, but no words came. She had never heard a warrior speak like this. In her world, warriors fought for glory, for pride, for power. But this man, he fought for others. Suddenly, thunder cracked outside again. The lamp flickered, and the window rattled in the wind. Lyra jumped slightly, her small frame tense. Without thinking, she stumbled closer to him. And then it happened. The human reached out, steadying her with his hand on her shoulder. His touch was firm, but gentle, strong, yet careful. It was the first time she had felt his strength directly, not in a fight, not against an enemy, but in a simple touch meant to keep her safe. Her heart pounded. The warmth of his hand burned through her pride, melting it away. She stared up at him, her silver eyes wide. For the first time, she felt something she could not explain, something that terrified her more than the beast from the night before. She stepped back quickly, her face hot. Don't touch me, she whispered, but her voice lacked strength. He withdrew his hand calmly, saying nothing. His silence said more than words ever could. Lyra turned away, hugging her arms. Her mind screamed at her. He is just a human. He is weak. He must be weak. But her heart whispered another truth, a truth she could no longer ignore. His strength was real, and it was unlike anything she had ever known. The room stayed silent for a long time. Finally, Lyra whispered, almost too softly to hear, Why? Why do I feel safe around you? The human did not answer. He simply looked at her with those calm eyes, eyes that held no pride, no mockery, only truth. And in that silence, Lyra's pride cracked open wider than ever before. She had touched the truth with her own heart, and it terrified her. The storm outside passed slowly, leaving the inn wrapped in silence. The air was still heavy, as if the world itself was waiting. Lyra sat alone in her room, knees pulled close to her chest. She could not forget the moment his hand had touched her shoulder. It had not been rough, not careless. It had been steady, warm enough to calm her, strong enough to remind her that she was not alone. Her pride screamed at her. He is only human, he is weak. You said so yourself, but her heart no longer believed that. Each time she remembered his touch, her chest tightened in a way she did not understand. When morning came, she told herself she would leave. She would escape this inn, this city, and the human who unsettled her. Yet when she opened her door, she found him already in the hallway. He nodded at her as if he had expected her. "We are leaving," he said simply. "Leaving?" she repeated. "The beast will return," he explained, "and others like it. This inn is no longer safe. The city walls are weak. If you want to survive, come with me." Lyra's mouth opened, ready to argue. She wanted to tell him she needed no human to protect her, but her legs betrayed her, carrying her after him as he walked calmly out of the inn. The road beyond the city was long and rough, filled with broken stones and shadows of old trees. Strange sounds echoed from the forest. Lyra walked behind him, silent at first, but her eyes never left his back. His steps were steady, his shoulders straight, his pace calm. No hesitation, no fear. Finally she spoke. "Why do you walk like that, as if nothing can touch you?" He glanced back at her. "Because fear feeds what hunts you. Calm starves it." She frowned, her pride fighting again. "You sound like an old teacher. Do you think calm will save you from claws and teeth?" Stopped for a moment, turning to face her. "No. Calm saves me from myself. If I panic, I fail. If I lose control, I endanger others. That is weakness, not strength." His words struck her harder than any weapon. She lowered her eyes, unable to answer. For the first time, she realized strength was not the roar of a warrior. It was the silence of one who stood firm when the world shook. As the day passed, Lyra grew tired. Her small frame was not built for such long roads. She stumbled once, then twice. At last her legs gave way and she fell to her knees, panting. He turned back instantly. Without a word, he lifted her onto his back. Her eyes widened. "What are you? Put me down. You cannot walk farther," he said calmly. "And I do not leave behind those who walk with me." Her face burned as her arms clung to his shoulders. She wanted to fight, to demand he let go. But the warmth of his back, the steadiness of his steps, stole her words. She buried her face against him, her pride crumbling with each step he carried. For hours he bore her weight without complaint. When they finally stopped at a small clearing by the river, he set her down gently. She sat there in silence, her heart racing. She had insulted him, mocked him, called him weak. And yet, he carried her as if she was worth more than his own comfort. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you do this?" He looked at the flowing water, his expression calm. "Because that is what strength is for. To carry what cannot carry itself. To protect even when unasked." Lyra's eyes burned, though she did not understand why. She wrapped her arms around herself and whispered, "I don't understand you." He glanced at her then, his eyes steady. "You will." The night came again. They lit a small fire beside the river. The forest whispered with unseen life, but beside the fire, his calm presence wrapped around her like a shield. She sat closer than before, drawn not by choice, but by something she could no longer resist. She studied his face in the firelight, strong, steady, without fear. She had thought humans were weak, but now she realized her mistake. His strength was not the loud, violent power she had known among her kind. His strength was silent, patient, unshakable, and she feared it, not because it was dangerous, but because it was changing her. Lyra turned away, pressing her knees close. Yet in the quiet of that night, her whisper escaped. "Maybe. I was wrong about you." The human did not answer. He only added another log to the fire, his eyes calm as always. But Lyra knew the truth. She had already begun to change. Her pride was no longer whole. The cracks had widened into something new. And though she did not want to admit it, part of her wanted to follow him, wherever his steady steps would lead. The fire by the river burned low, glowing like a faint star in the dark forest. Lyra sat close to it, her knees pulled up, her silver eyes staring into the flames. She should have been thinking of her bold words from the first night, of her promise to expose the human as weak. But those words felt distant now, like a foolish memory that belonged to someone else. The human sat across from her, calm as ever. He rested with his back against a tree, his arms folded lightly. He looked neither proud nor weary. His silence filled the space like the steady heartbeat of the earth. Lyra hugged her arms around herself. For the first time in her life, she did not know what to say. Pride had once been her shield, but that shield had cracked too many times in his presence. Now she felt bare, as if he could see straight through her. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft. "Why did you not leave me behind?" Human opened his eyes and looked at her, because strength without compassion is only cruelty. "If I had left you, what would my strength be worth?" His words sank deep, heavy with meaning. Lyra lowered her gaze, her chest tight. She remembered the beast in the inn, the steady way. He had carried her on his back, the warmth of his hand on her shoulder. Every moment had broken down her walls piece by piece until she could no longer pretend. "You are not weak," she whispered. The words trembled as they left her lips, but once spoken, they could not be taken back. The human did not smile. He did not gloat. He only nodded, as if the truth had always been known, and he had only been waiting for her to see it. Lyra's throat burned. She clenched her fists and forced herself to say more. "When I mocked you, I thought I was strong. But I see now I was the weak one. My strength was only noise. Yours is real." The fire cracked softly. The human's calm eyes never wavered. "You have seen it now. That is enough." Lyra blinked. "Enough?" He nodded. "Strength is not a contest. It is not for pride or victory. It is for living, for protecting, for enduring. If you understand that, then you are no longer weak." Her heart pounded. His words, so simple, carried more weight than any battle speech she had ever heard. She felt her pride finally crumble completely, leaving behind something new, something softer, yet stronger. Silence stretched between them. The forest whispered. The river flowed, and Lyra felt her chest ache with something she had never known before. Respect, admiration, and something deeper that she was afraid to name. At last she shifted closer to the fire. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "You changed me." The human tilted his head slightly but said nothing. His silence was no longer heavy to her. It was comforting. Lyra's eyes stung, though she did not cry. She had mocked him, insulted him, tried to tear him down. Yet he had given her patience, safety, and truth. And now she realized she would never see the galaxy the same way again. Dawn began to break. Painting the sky with pale light, Lyra stood beside him. The road ahead stretched into the horizon, filled with shadows and unknown dangers. Once she would have feared it. Once she would have shouted to hide her fear. But now, standing beside the human, she felt steady for the first time in her life. The city behind them would remember her as the girl who mocked a human, but she would remember herself as the girl who learned the truth, and was changed forever by it. She turned her head, her silver hair catching the first light of day. "Where will we go now?" The human adjusted the pack on his shoulder, his voice calm. "Where the path leads, step by step." Lyra nodded. For once she did not argue. She walked beside him, her steps small but sure. And though her pride was gone, something stronger had taken its place. The tiny alien girl who once mocked a human's strength now walked with him into the unknown, carrying not her arrogance, but his truth, and she knew deep inside that her first night with him had not only changed everything, it had changed her forever.